hello. Hello, MECLA, and all those of us, or you who are joining us today. I can see that people are joining the meeting. Welcome. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, MECLA stands for the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance. We are an alliance that works across the entire ecosystem that makes up the built environment, incorporating all participants across research, industry and government and everyone else involved there. And we were working across the supply and the demand side so that together we can lower embodied carbon across the built environment. MECLA, as you know, works in a pre-competition or pre-competitive environment, and we consider ourselves a do tank. We are coming together as a group of people to not just talk, but actually do things, move things forward together. And we are not shying away from having a good conversation on the way. For today, we're meeting to hear from a range of wonderful people who are very actively engaged within MECLA and the built environment, to hear about the 10-year roadmap for bamboo and about the Next Frontier summit on bamboo that took place in Australia in June. But before we get started, I want to take a minute to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we live. And I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I normally live on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, but I am joining you today from Germany. That's where I hail from originally. Last weekend, I went to visit a family who lives close to the Dutch border, and in the 1950s, they started a project where they started planting giant sequoia trees on their farm. They wanted to see, does it work for plantation timber, other things, but they kind of moved away from that. And over the last decades, they've built this giant arboretum. They've built a little forest really with plants from all across the world. They've got a whole forest there with all the grasses and the bushes and the big trees, and amongst many different kinds of bamboo that seem to grow here in this area as well, I found two little Wollemi pines sitting there, and someone had brought them in and sponsors them being grown there. And that made me feel really connected to Australia, and I was really proud of that connection between my original homelands and Australia. I'd first come across the Wollemi pines, like many of us, during the giant bushfires we had in Australia in 2019 and 20, and I couldn't believe when I heard it that they had been around for millions of years. It's a wonderful tie-in to show the connections between continents, as I've mentioned, but also a reminder of our ancient culture in Australia and the importance that culture and the history for Australia it has. But let's get started with our event. It's a tight-packed agenda, and we'll be going through. So I will be handing over to our first two speakers. We have the wonderful Jennifer Snyders, the president of the Bamboo Society in Australia. She's also the CEO of the House of Bamboo, and notably one of the winners of the 2023 MECLA Innovative Building Materials Challenge. And the other person is Jeremy Mansfield. He's the founder and director of Mansfield Advisory, who organised the summit with Jennifer. And he's been around MECLA right from the beginning and has been chairing one of our working groups on sharing knowledge. So very well accustomed and strongly connected to MECLA. Jennifer and Jeremy will give us a little bit of a summary of the summit that took place in 3 cities across Australia in June. I mentioned it was in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. I had the pleasure, the opportunity to attend that one. And it was really eye-opening to see the opportunities that bamboo has and to hear about some of the places where bamboo is already being used and is being incorporated in buildings in Australia and across the world, and to hear more about that incredible potential that bamboo has for the built environment in Australia, especially when we look at the need for new buildings that Australia has over coming decades. We also had the opportunity in July to host a deep dive to one of those buildings that Jennifer, I believe, will be telling us a little bit about today, a building built by Hasselt, another MECLA member, the Advanced Manufacturing Readiness Facility, the first building in Bradfield. So they'll be talking about the summit, and then they will be talking about the 10-year bamboo roadmap that currently is being finalised before this is being launched in September. Following the presentation, we will have we will welcome two additional participants, Neil Savary, the Managing Director of ICCES, who was also a summit sponsor, and Isabella van der Griend, Materials Specialist at Brightworks Sustainability, who was also presenting at the summit. And then we will all come together in that panel discussion where you will have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you do have any questions that come up during the presentations, please put them in the Q&A, and then we can go through them and answer them for you all. And with that, I hand over to Jeremy and Jennifer.
Just checking that's come up for you.
Yes, it is.
Right. Over to you, Jen.
All right. Thank you. So thank you, MECLA, for the opportunity to brief everybody on the summit that we had last month. We look forward to sharing the insights that we gained and looking forward to the feedback as well. Okay. Bamboo Society of Australia pays respect to the First Nations people, traditional custodians and elders past, present, and for their stewardship of country. Thanks, Jeremy. All right. So before we talk about bamboo, I want to step back and look at the bigger picture. So Australia faces a perfect storm: a housing crisis, timber supply shortfall, rising costs, and heavy reliance on imports. And innovation in alternatives has really been slow, leaving us vulnerable and unable to meet the demand. So on next one. Thanks, Jeremy. And on top of this, construction is responsible for over 30% of emissions and generates massive waste, 27 million tonnes a year, with most commercial furniture ending up in landfill. So buildings and infrastructure alone contribute almost a third of Australia's carbon emissions. So if materials are part of the problem, then let's see how bamboo can be part of the solution.
Australia's agricultural and building industries face a crossroad. Demand for resources is rising while forests are decreasing, creating a supply shortage. What if the solution has been growing right under our noses for 30 million years? Bamboo is a remarkable resource. It grows 10 times faster than timber and can be harvested annually after reaching maturity, naturally regenerating itself. In stark contrast, traditional timber demands decades to mature. With bamboo, there is a sustainable supply year after year. This remarkable grass maximises production with minimal land use, sparing our native forests from destruction. By yielding more from smaller areas and regenerating, bamboo ensures a sustainable supply while championing environmental conservation. Bamboo plays a vital role in restoring degraded land, purifying water, and capturing carbon at levels surpassing those of traditional forests. It represents a valuable opportunity for environmental restoration with economic return. Modern plantations use clumping, non-invasive varieties, harnessing Australia's native bamboo species, complementing Australia's forestry expertise, and creating new opportunities without replacing the existing industries. This approach has the potential to provide sustainable energy, create resilient materials, and strengthen rural industries. With careful selection, bamboo farming can integrate into our agricultural system. Together, we can grow Australia's future with bamboo.
And with that, that was the start of our opening to the Frontier Summit across 3 cities, and having these remarkable speakers join us. Expertise globally in terms of cross-laminated and engineered timber and bamboo, to those that are delivering that at scale, and to some familiar faces you'll see here on the screen. So we're very grateful for the breadth of speakers we had participate in the summit. The summit was about exploring the opportunity, as Patty said earlier, the 10-year roadmap, the plan of what do we need to do over a 10-year period across a series of phases to actually develop an industry from scratch, from foundations through to market scale, to harvesting, commercialisation. We had it all in terms of identifying these kind of key phases and identifying 16 themes of actions to actually support the roadmap. So the event was framed around this to explore the opportunities across these themes, and we broke it into 3 different areas for the different cities. Across the Sunshine Coast, Sydney and Melbourne, firstly starting around looking at the focus on growing, production and harvesting and supply chain readiness, and through into the other cities. But we'll first focus on the Sunshine Coast and learn a bit more about what bamboo is.
So there's a common belief that bamboo is invasive, and that's just not the case. So there's 1,500 species worldwide, around half are clumping, which means that they keep a stable root system rather than spreading aggressively. So the roots extend around about 30% of the plant's height, creating stability while storing carbon. So Australia even has 3 native bamboo species. And it's not technically a tree at all, it's actually a giant grass. So that brings us to the most remarkable quality, which is just how fast it grows. Sorry, Sherry.
That's right.
Bamboo's biggest advantage is that it's fastest growing plant on it, so it can reach full height in just 6 months. And then it actually spends the next 5 to 7 years strengthening its internal structure, which is when it reaches its optimal strength for construction materials. So unlike timber, it regenerates annually, harvested above the ground while the root system remains intact. It's not a forestry product, but an agricultural crop, more like a fruit tree. So yet it performs like a hardwood. So that raises an important question. Where does it fit in our current material framework? Beyond its growth speed, its environmental impact is just as impressive. So it sequesters carbon up to 4 times the rate of some trees and produces 35% more oxygen. And because only mature 5-year-old calms are harvested, about 75% of the plant actually remains untouched. So there's no clear felling, biodiversity is preserved, and because it's cut above the ground, carbon stays stored in the soil. So each year, new shoots generate, creating a truly sustainable annual harvest. So the question is, where could we actually grow bamboo in Australia? So here we can see the potential land area for bamboo in Australia. Non-invasive species can be grown on degraded sites such as open cut mines and wetlands. And together, this available land is greater than the size of Europe. That's an enormous opportunity for rehabilitation and new resource creation. And even if we used only a fraction of that land, the results would be transformative. If we just planted on 1% of the agricultural land in Australia, we could generate a renewable annual yield of raw material. Because bamboo regenerates each year, this is not a one-off harvest. It's ongoing. The potential is huge, with modelling suggesting up to a 40% reduction in emissions by 2060 if utilised at scale. So which leads us to the final piece. How are all the raw material can be used in construction? With all the potential raw material, so you can see from the area of how we break up the poles and how we work within the different areas and what the final product options are with regards to the bamboo. So with all the potential raw material, the next step is how it can be transformed into structural materials. And this is where the real impact is.
So that leads us well into Sydney, talking to architects, designers, and about the use cases of applying it into the built environment, which many of MECLA here would be very interested in, and I'm sure there's plenty of those that might have joined us in Sydney for that particular event. So with that being said, we had the opportunity to explore and highlight what has already been built with bamboo and what is possible. We'll share a bit of that. Understanding the engineering specifications for bamboo and comparing to timber. Again, we've got some results that will be shared. The role of bamboo can play in reducing embodied carbon footprints and carbon sequestration. Isabella will share a bit more about her involvement with that aspect in a minute. And then we had a good conversation around the need to use performance solutions in the event that we don't have existing standards, and follow the pathway led by the cross-engineered the engineered timber pathway in terms of existing standards and utilising those international acceptance criteria to start to implement its utilisation. We were hugely fortunate to have Professor Chow join us from China. This is his 7-story bamboo building. Yes, I said 7 stories of bamboo. Looks just like a cross-laminated engineered timber building in most parts. In fact, the floor plates on this are actually a cross-laminated bamboo and timber structure flooring system. So they are very close bed partners, timber and bamboo here. We also got him to share some concluding remarks, which we thought were very astute and very important to realise that we have reached a breakthrough moment in seeing that it applied in that mass-engineered, mass bamboo demonstration project, sharing its potential and demonstrating its ability to achieve all the other attributes required of any mass-engineered building system. So very fortunate to see that.
And then I said, well, build it and they will come. So I created a showroom, building it with structural bamboo to show what's possible. And that actually caught the attention of Professor Mahmood from Deakin University, who offered to test the material, which is very exciting. And that was also overseen by Professor Neil Thomas from the UK. So they're already tested ISO standards that exist. So it was really important to get this opportunity to generate Australian results and compare those. So the exciting part of that period is that the tests have just been completed 2 weeks ago. So we look forward to providing those results, hopefully mid-September, and then look at how to design to those.
Isabella, you want to join us?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. As mentioned, I'm a materials specialist. I work as a sustainability consultant at Brightworks, and majority of my work focuses on embodied carbon, particularly through conducting whole building life cycle assessments. So I also come from a background in working with bamboo in Indonesia before working as a consultant. So I participated in the symposium to present on bamboo's role in the work that I do, and how we talk about embodied carbon and decarbonizing our buildings. So over the years, I've seen the conversations with clients really evolve from what's a low carbon alternative to what are some innovative materials that can really shift and decarbonize our buildings. And more and more of those conversations have been around bio-based materials and materials beyond timber, because clients are really recognizing in order to truly decarbonize our buildings, we need to start introducing bio-based materials, as they represent a really large opportunity to reduce our emissions. Next slide, Jeremy. So one of the case studies that I presented during the symposium was a multifamily building that a client came to us and wanted to study various pathways to decarbonize this typical build that they do. And one of the pathways we explored was using BAMCOR's prefabricated wall system alongside some other materials like hemp insulation. But through modeling this bamboo-based system, we saw not only a large decrease in the upfront emissions, but also a very significant amount of biogenic carbon stored within this type of building. So really exciting to start modeling how bamboo plays a role in decarbonizing a typical structure. Next slide, please. So when we compare bamboo's embodied carbon to other materials, we can see that bamboo has a really large biogenic carbon storage because it, as Jennifer was saying, it grows much faster, and with its higher density, it locks away a lot more carbon per cubic meter. But some engineered products can be higher in terms of their fossil emissions because they take a bit more processing energy and some adhesives, so that can also kind of influence the increase in embodied carbon. But what I really want to speak to is kind of what's missing in our current LCA models, is that we aren't properly accounting for the rapid regrowth rate and other sustainability benefits that bamboo, that Jennifer spoke about earlier. So I'll talk about that in my next slide. So generally, this brings me to just some methods in carbon accounting. So today's practice following current standards, typically ISO and EN standards, is what we call static LCA. So for every carbon sequestered during the plant's growth, there is an equal amount of carbon that is emitted back into the atmosphere at the end of the building's life or the material's life. So this is essentially assuming carbon neutrality over the full life cycle. And it's ignoring a really key component here, which is the timing. It's not reflecting the rotation periods of different bio-based materials or speed of regrowth. And that's a really key differentiator between materials like timber versus bamboo and straw that have regrowth rates much faster. So in order to account for this, dynamic LCAs are becoming more common. Dynamic LCA, the objective there is to consider the timing component. So by adding that dimension, we're showing that fast regrowth rate that bamboo has. And that regrowth rate of 4 to 5 years means that we can achieve a net cooling impact much faster than with other carbon emitting materials or longer harvesting timbers. So, and this is really important when we're talking about meeting our climate goals and the kind of urgency around that timing component. Yeah, so I'll hand it back over.
Mute. You're on mute.
I'm near the airport. I'm trying to save you airplane noises. Here's some, so what we're going to share now is some examples of engineered bamboo applications here in Australia. So this is all about curves, engineered bamboo in the Marvel Stadium. So this was completed last year. All the components were about 167 battens. All of them were prefabricated and brought to site, and it was a seamless installation. And doesn't it look beautiful? Bamboo and curves. Next one. So this was what MECLA also referred to. So we had an open day there with the MECLA about a month ago. So this was with Hassel Studio, all that bamboo working so beautifully with all that timber. Aren't they nice partners? And this was a wonderful project. It was all external battens that we used. We prefabricated the whole system. And it was attached to the glazing, and we worked with the glazers, and that was all brought in, pre-made, and then assembled on site seamlessly, might I add. And interestingly, next slide, I think, is it? Oh, sorry. Okay. This was pre-made panels for a ceiling fit out for Chatswood Chase. Each individual panel was unique, so not one panel was the same. And that was pre-assembled and then delivered on site, and I think it was a 3-day installation. Bamboo ply used for cabinetry, joinery items and flooring in this case, and Hathel actually wanted to accentuate the fact that it was bamboo, and therefore we used a construction whereby the nodes are quite clearly seen in the visuals of the material. And Woolworths decided to use bamboo because of its good story about environmental benefits, and this is all in their health region and areas, fresh food areas. And here's our showroom, all bamboo, floors, walls, fit out structure, and it's a good example of what's possible. Come on down if you're around.
And talking about that was a great lead into this panel discussion. I won't go into the details of presenting here, but in fact, there are 4 people on this list of people here, and they're all standards backgrounds. So it was a great opportunity to talk about the challenges of a new innovative material and how to get adoption into the industry. In terms of that, we actually, through that Sydney session, determined that there's great examples of a breakthrough moment, a demonstration of real-world outcomes from an innovation perspective, that we understand now that its performance characteristics to actually meet or exceed existing other materials in the space, that there's methodologies through performance-based solutions and following the path of cross-laminated timber in terms of that early stage of performance-based approach until it got to a DTS deemed to satisfy over a decade. But there are existing international standards and ISO frameworks to actually work with to help to co-design to utilise here in Australia. But we do have still some challenges around some of the mindset of definitional hurdles around regulatory definitions, and also identifying the fact that it's a grass not necessarily known to be a structural performing material. So that's kind of really the summary of some of the discussions in Sydney. And then we moved to Melbourne. We're focusing then on some of the investment and policy issues, as well as sharing a few other demonstration of international things that are occurring. And part of that was actually demonstrating one of our partners in the summit, Rhizome and David Sands, who shared their global experiences and highlighting that Fortune 500 companies are getting involved, identifying the early planting and getting going to support those has really helped to them start to scale up, and increasing investors are looking at that carbon sequestration and biodiversity benefits for large-scale projects there in both developing countries and developed countries, i.e. Philippines and Florida and the USA. Did?
And then it was important I thought, to share scaling up and what is feasible and what is possible. So this is our factory in China where we produce the materials. Next, and we repurposed a lot of it, but a lot of it was prefabricated, engineered bamboo, as you can see the elements there, and photos of the factory and the type of materials that we're producing. So the capacity, to give some indication, is we can produce around 10,000 cubic metres of engineered bamboo per month. I think currently we do about 40 to 50,000 cubic metres of CLT in Australia per year. Metres up to 16 metres can achieved with lengths, and you can see the different widths and dimensions. Durability class 1, thermally modified, anti-mold treatments exist, fire retardant exist. We do lots of work around the standards, and R&D is always a going concern as what we work towards. So from this factory, I'd like to share some of the projects that have been built with engineered bamboo, so you can see the possibilities of what we hope to be doing in Australia shortly. This was Foster and Allen Six Senses Resort. There's 200 cubic metres of bamboo used, and just to show you the factory making the pieces. So that's the size of those elements you can see with the people. So that's quite impressive, I thought. Okay. So this is Chongman Island, engineered bamboo, estimated about 200 cubic metres used here in this design. This was Shanghai Library. So this is actually bamboo battens as well as bamboo veneers over aluminium posts because it needed to meet a fire regulation for this particular building. And so that was how it was achieved. Rayon Airport. So that's similar to the Madrid airport that was just one of the first commercial bamboo works. Ceiling panels, acoustic panel clip systems. Cuping Mountain, engineered bamboo, about 500 cubic metres, all externally used. It's mould treated and performs really well. Shaw Auditorium. So this is all bamboo, the entire project, including the auditorium and the acoustic panels. And it was an environmental award as well. And then we've got M+ Museum. So I love this project. So if you ever get to Hong Kong, please do it. So there's a huge amount of bamboo used here, from flooring to cabinetry to some of the structural beams, etc. And it's a great testament of what's possible.
We were also joined by Adam Jones from CLT Toolbox, providing some lessons learnt in what he's been doing to help as a startup to support the cross-laminated timber industry, and really reflecting on a couple of key areas of building manufacturing capacity and identifying the underutilisation risks. And we certainly flagged the opportunities to work with the timber industry's manufacturing capacity to help to support and realise greater productivity. Equally, product development and products that have evidence of certification and meeting international standards and the like are a key and critical issue to help to provide confidence around its ability to be evident and have the evidence of suitability for its application. And lastly, acknowledging that making it easy to design is a real key issue, that if you haven't actually got that right, then you might not get application of the use of the engineered bamboo products. So recognising that even just having certified products is one thing, making it accessible and easy to utilise in design processes is an important factor that he made, I guess, a great set of insights of highlighting how important it is to put the tools in the hands of those that make it easier for them to design with that and integrate bamboo specifications within his toolbox with other engineered timber products to help support its utilisation. Mia?
Sorry, the airport. And then we're excited to meet Sean Steed, who has produced 100% bio-epoxy resin that's truly non-toxic. So resin's always a very important discussion to have, especially when we're talking about materials, because it's a key component of the material and is relevant in a circular economy and end of life. So there's a lot of work around biomaterials and bio-resins and glues, but Sean's got an epoxy resin, so we're actually excited about testing that currently and seeing how that works in terms of strength, etc. So keep this posted.
So Melbourne was a breadth of things across exciting progress in some of those startups, but also some international examples of products and as well as investment being made overseas. So it really gave us something to learn from. But we did also spend time looking at the policy hurdles and roadblocks, acknowledging that bamboo doesn't really sit comfortably in existing forestry or agricultural industries. It's also being missed in terms of national policy frameworks, whether that's circular economy, whether that's carbon for nature roadmaps, and a range of other forestry industry plans, etc. So lots more work to do to engage with government. And we hope that World Bamboo Day in September, when we release the final roadmap, taking on board all the feedback from the summit, helps to realise opportunities to collaborate with partners to deliver a locally delivered product into the Australia community. And identifying also that Bamboo Society now needs to play a bigger role to advocate for progressing the industry to help to support its production here in Australia. With that, we had a range of sponsors we're very grateful for. ICC Evaluation Service, our primary sponsor, and Neil's here today representing them. Just fantastic to have their support, and the rest of the sponsors. Equally, having 3 universities support us doing a 3-day event in 3 days in succession was an amazing feat, and we're very grateful for their support. And equally looking at their participation along with some other universities on the research aspects of what needs to support the industry and the roadmap as well. With that, next steps is World Bamboo Day. We plan to try to get the roadmap report launched to provide that to stakeholders, to provide the right signals to support what's needed to make the industry happen here in Australia across those 6 key areas and across the 10-year phase. And with that, we thought we'd leave a bit of a kind of passing, a lasting kind of reflection on what powerful actions might help the movement, particularly from a MECLA perspective. And we kind of frame it this way around we're really looking to see a need for policy and investment signals to really support the industry getting going. Partnerships across industry, First Nations, research, NGOs, government finance are all critical to help collaborate. The performance, the standards and certification, utilising international acceptance criteria and co-designing future standards is a key important aspect to help support the industry, as well as the critical role that pilot projects to explore scale, demonstrate feasibility across residential, commercial scales, helps to provide proof points to actually demonstrate, why others and how to build a locally providing industry. And lastly, Jen?
Got to join the Bamboo Society. So this is the industry's, voice for bamboo from both the growing and the agricultural side through to the byproducts and what can be provided through bamboo, cultivation and harvesting, etc. And if you become a member, you can access all the talks that were at the summit, plus have resources and research documents. And it also will provide a body of information with expert opinions and generate further discussions and movement. So please join the Bamboo Society.
Over to you, Carney.
Yes, wonderful. Well, I'm excited by this. I was really excited by the event when I attended it. There were so many things that we heard about, and I'd love to invite all the panelists, Neil and Isabella, to put their camera on now, and then we can go into some of the questions that I have been seeing come in through the Q&A. And as Jeff Oatman, who put that in there, I can't phrase it any better way than what he did. This all sounds great. What's the holdup? What is holding us back? Seems like this is giving us all the answers to many of the questions we're having around the built environment and some of the lack of the materials we need. What's the holdup? What are the main barriers beyond, maybe in a little bit more detail? Who wants to get started? Maybe Neil, we haven't heard from you. Let's get started with you.
Well, and I must say that I've shared similar thoughts as Jeff and yourself, and no doubt many others. And when I first joined with Jeremy and Jennifer, I had a lot of similar questions of them. Fair to say that this is a journey not dissimilar to that of engineered timber, which many people will be familiar with from more than a decade ago, where there was reticence, there were critics, there was concern from, for instance, fire brigades about the risks. The regulatory environment really wasn't adapted or ready for this sort of technology. But the one that kind of sticks in my mind is it's this chicken and egg kind of scenario that we don't have the crop. The crop's not going to come unless there's a demand. To generate the demand, you've got to overcome all these kind of either real or perceived barriers that exist. And I think that's why Jeremy and Jennifer have been so careful about developing the roadmap, identifying what the issues are and how we have to step through those issues over a period of time. And I think that's just a really sensible approach to how we address those real, perceived and whatever other barriers exist. But it's a totally logical question to ask.
Jennifer, do you want to add in there a little bit on the scaling the chicken and egg question? Who needs to do what to get us started?
We need to grow it.
We
Let's
need to
start
grow
there.
it.
That's a pretty basic thing. I noticed one of the questions was if it grows so fast, what are the inputs, fertilizer and water, etc. So it doesn't require fertilizer, which is a beauty, and water is only required in its initial stages, but it's not significant. Ideally, optimally, it would like 3,000 millimetres a year over the time, but, you know, we quite successfully grow it at 1,400 or 800 millilitres per year. We're getting plenty of rain at the moment, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So I think initially we got to grow it, and I think that that's key. And then obviously the process is the raw material and getting it into production. And there were conversations around utilising existing timber mills and utilising the machinery around that and seeing if there's opportunities for that as well.
Yes, and I remember during the summit there was a bamboo grower, a local bamboo grower in there, and he said, like, well, the thing that I noticed is with bamboo is it wants to be harvested. It actually grows so much better when it's being harvested, and I thought that was a real revelation. Like, yes, actually, it needs to be harvested. It makes it the better. It makes it all the better for it. So if we do get to harvest here, there is also that entire potential for growing that workforce and the manufacturing around it that we clearly don't seem to be having here. The other question we have here around sort of supporting the carbon sequestration. Isabella, you mentioned it. It does sequester carbon. What are the studies around here? Someone wants to know. The question in the chat is that from their understanding, the sequestration rates vary by species and by locations. Do we have any studies and background information on this?
Yeah, we do internationally, and in fact, we discovered, because we went and did our first summit day at the University of Sunshine Coast, that there are people that have already done studies on carbon sequestration of bamboo plantations in Vietnam, but also the demonstration of methodologies for soil carbon and above and below ground sequestration data sets from China, from Italy, Ethiopia, and other methodologies. So those all exist in terms of that content, but we don't have the data sets from here because we haven't been growing it as a plantation piece as a basis of that. So yep, there's good evidence of that. It does vary from species to species, but there's a pretty broad read of data on kind of the methodologies, and hence why Rhizome has had such an incredible investment to support their production in both Philippines and Florida from Fortune 500 companies to do that. And part of that investment in the carbon side of it has been the start and for them to get support for it. So I think just going back to your other question, one of the issues here is that there is some myth busting to be done. We talked a bit about some of that, but in terms of, is bamboo a suitable material for the building industry? It's a giant grass. It's not timber. And so there's already, and then we have to have the discussion around invasive versus non-invasive. But also it's, as Jennifer said, an agricultural crop that is like a fruit tree. So you're harvesting above the ground. You're not disturbing the soil. It's not really like a forestry type product, even though the output from your harvesting after the 5 to 7 years with your first harvest and then harvesting year after is actually a product and then gets provided to the building industry. So there's a tricky part where it's somewhat like some parts of the industry, but some of the areas where it might coexist, whether that's sugarcane and other farming side of it, they're used to a regular income from year one, whereas this needs a little bit more investment, but not dissimilar to some other types of products, whether that's fruit trees or other things that have a similar kind of model. It's just that the output is going back into a processing for an industry that is typically different from agriculture in terms of that. So there are commonalities, but then that becomes a policy difference because it's not recognised in terms of it playing a role supporting the timber industry side of things. So it's just some miscloses of policy that we need to unravel.
Yes, yes. So I remember at the summit, there was a whole conversation with you, Neil, around the standards. How do we get those strength properties added to the Australian standards is another question that comes in here. What are the steps to get that going? And
yeah. So I noted that question, and there's another one relating to standards as well. The first comment I'll make is that standards and codes and regulation are recognised as one of the key steps in the roadmap, and that needs to be resolved over the next 2 to 3 years, because what we want to do is streamline the process that will generate greater demand for the product because of the ease of getting it through the regulatory process. In the first instance, and I'm going back to a couple of references that Jeremy made in his presentation, we do have the benefit of a performance-based code. So in the absence of those standards, or standards that are referenced in the code at least, there's a methodology available for the industry to use bamboo by having the product certified either through CodeMark or some other methodology as demonstrating compliance with the National Construction Code. So whilst that opportunity is available now and can be used in order to kickstart, say, a demonstration project, which is also in the roadmap and seen as a critical step, what you'd want to be doing concurrently with that is starting the process of developing either a standard through Standards Australia, and Standards Australia was represented at that Sydney session of the summit and spoke very positively about that. Or it could, in fact, be an industry standard. Now, why I say that is because if we use the engineered timber example again, that was done by Forestry and Woods Products Association. So they developed the industry standard and were able to satisfy the Australian Building Codes Board's requirements for the referencing of that standard into the National Construction Code, satisfying fire authorities and other regulators. So there are different processes, but the important thing is to acknowledge that there's a way of dealing with this immediately through performance, but then that enables us to have some time to look at what the best way is to develop a standard, and there are different pathways for doing that.
Yeah. And another one that I want to mention here, does sustainability certification of bamboo matter for use in construction?
So that was the other one I saw, if I can just jump in there.
Yeah.
I think my immediate answer is yes, it matters. It's not necessarily mandatory at the moment. So if we think about some of the large construction firms, developers, etc., particularly those who are associated with the Green Building Council, member of Green Building Council, etc., it's more than likely that they would want to be able to demonstrate the virtues and the properties of the materials that they're using, including if they're using bamboo, through having certification that, independent verification of the claims that are being made, which might include life cycle assessment, environmental product declarations, etc. But strictly speaking, that isn't a mandatory requirement at the moment, although climate reporting requirements, which impact some of those large companies, the multiplexes, the lend leases, etc., they need their supply chains to be providing them with evidence for them to be able to report on their climate requirements. So in one way, in a roundabout way, there is a need in some cases for there to be certification to validate the claims being made.
Yes. So assuming we can get this going, how quickly can we scale up bamboo to be used not just for those wonderful big projects that we've seen, like airports or first buildings, but maybe also for the residential market? We know there's a housing crisis. Is there a way to quickly scale up in Australia with this?
Well, I guess one example, Rhizome planted 75 million bamboo poles in a year. So volume of scale is not possibly the biggest issue. It's identifying the potential locations and land opportunities and working with those, and validating some of the harvesting technology to help make sure that it can be productively harvested. So that needs to be done in tandem with that. So that's part of we've got in the roadmap to identify not only getting planting, but also understanding how to do that in the most efficient way to ensure that it's commercially viable once it's being harvested. So, Jen, do you want to add some more to that?
Jen, did you want to add some more to that?
Planes going overhead non-stop at the moment. Apologise. Sorry, I couldn't hear anything then.
Just about the potential for scaling up planting and starting up.
So in terms of planting, we know that we've got the land and we know the species to select for that. So it's a matter of just finding what your end product is that you're working on, because it's not only construction materials. We can utilise the bamboo for biochar and some other materials as end products. I think the important thing to realise with bamboo is that once it's established and planted, it actually needs to be maintained on a yearly basis, and it actually doesn't want to live past 10 to 11 years. So it actually wants you to use its crop in whichever end result that you want it to use for. So, it's a continual growing crop that, can be utilised for all the different areas.
Okay,
What's the hold-up?
Yeah, what's the hold up? Jeff has asked another question. What the sort of financial investment would be required to get this started up quickly? And can we make it, like, as Jeremy mentioned, commercially viable? How does it compare price-wise once we have it onto the market, for example, to CLT?
So in terms of the costing of the end product at the moment, it's comparable to CLT. It's probably a little bit more. I mean, we import quite a lot of CLT. We import most LVL. I think the entry point, interestingly, I think as an acceptance into the Australian market and to get more support from the timber industry, is to do hybrid materials where we use the strengths of the bamboo and then we use the strengths of the timber, which are different. And we use it as a hybrid material, which we're doing some testing around there. But I think that collaboration with the timber industry is really critical for us to get some movement and some opportunity to scale up. So I think that's the entry point on how we work with that.
Yes. All right. Well, one last question before we wind up. We're having 5 minutes left. CJ has put in a question around the bamboo testing methodology. Does it follow the same standards as engineered wood products? And if not, do we have a standard created for testing engineered bamboo elements?
Yeah, so there are tests that are referenced in the code, the National Construction Code now, that can be used for any material. So I'm thinking, for instance, like fire testing. Most of the focus of this conversation is around structure, but like any other material that's used in a building, it's got to demonstrate its fire properties. So the same fire tests would be applied to bamboo as any other materials. Structural elements likewise, but there is some nuancing related to that. There are international standards, and that's why one of the benefits of going down a performance pathway in the first instance to demonstrate the properties of this material is that you can actually employ international standards. You can bypass the reference standards in the code and use international standards to demonstrate compliance with the performance requirements. It's a much more complex approach. But in terms of CJ Wilson's question, that does mean that, for instance, there's reference there to creating testing engineered bamboo elements. I think there are international standards available if they're not Australian standards.
And
yes,
also, Dr. Mahmood Ashraf from Deakin is on the ISO standard for structurally engineered bamboo. So we do have a connection into that, and obviously further dialogue with Standards Australia is happening around the opportunities to co-design some of the opportunities to help understand what are the faster pathways to support the industry scaling up. So there's definitely opportunities to address some of those issues as well.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll have to wrap this up. And for wrapping up, I would love to ask you all to give me a one-sentence answer if you can. What's your call to action? What's the one thing we need to do? Let's do a little round robin here. Who wants to go first?
I did jot down a quick answer. Evidence-based to dispense with the myths, overcome industry reticence to trying something that it's unfamiliar with, and in doing so, generate demand to enable supply feasibility.
Wonderful.
That was part of my sentence, so I'll take that one on.
I'll just say that education is key, and just speaking to more and more about bamboo and telling people about its benefits just helps bring awareness to the industry.
Yeah, for me, I think it's about the touch and feel and doing the pilots, because once you have demonstration projects, whether that's a framing system for residential or a 4-star building or a 4-floor story building or a warehouse retrofit, some of those opportunities will help to understand its possibilities. And so really looking for clients to get on board to have a crack at this. We can utilize the available product now out of China to help to validate its performance and then help to provide the demand to enable us to build the local supply when we can get that to harvest in a period of time. So pilot projects for me are a real opportunity now to help test the viability. There's already enough exemplars around the world for us to work from. And surely within this MECLA crowd, we can find some people that want to have a crack at some unique and amazing buildings that can utilise a rapidly renewable biogenic engineered wood product, engineered bamboo product that actually help to really shift the dial in a rapid decarbonisation. So there's a long answer to you, Carly.
No, that's fantastic. And it's amazing how it ties in with everything that MECLA stands for. We love seeing new materials come into place that help us decarbonize, and the doing, the knowledge sharing, the piloting, the talking about what's important and bringing everyone on board and raising that awareness on all levels within the system. That's the work that we're kind of seeing. And I'm so happy that we got the opportunity to test this here today. We have to wrap this up now. Unfortunately, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about the roadmap that will be coming out in September. We'll definitely let you know about this. Just for the admin, this has been recorded. We will put this up on the website. I saw Jeremy typing away some of the answers. We will try and get the chat and the answers all out on the website along with the presentation, and we'll keep you informed on everything that will be happening. Looking forward to having more conversations about bamboo moving forward and seeing where it moves and that it takes its rightful place in the built environment moving forward. So thank you all for attending. We've made it to a full hour. It's 00 my clock. It's 8 a.m. I am up for breakfast now, and I wish you all a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Carly.
Bye all.
Thanks, Nicola.